Thank you all for
Oh,
coming in today. I know this is not our normal family meeting. We've got a lot of guests with us today. Uh, but in these crazy times, I don't know how else to say it. I thought this would be a really cool opportunity to bring some of our credit union friends together. Um, Kristen and I were just talking about some of the projects that we've been working on now that we're not traveling through several different airports all week long. And I know a lot of folks are taking this time to focus on projects. Leadership is one of those that I know a lot of our credit union folks are working on. And when we read the book Permission to Screw Up last fall as part of our book club, it hit me that like I could put myself in almost every situation that you wrote about in that book along my leadership journey. And I think we started about the same time, around 2008-ish or so. So I can guarantee we hit a few of those benchmarks together. I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself and we'll jump right in.
yeah. So welcome everyone. Hi, I'm Kristen. And maybe it would be helpful to tell you a little bit about my background and kind of my business and how it all came to be. And then we can dive into all of those amazing questions. So I think if you were to ask my parents, they would tell you that they knew I was going to be an entrepreneur because as a kid, I was always so fascinated with business. I asked for a cash register for my 6th birthday. But I personally did not think that being a business owner was in the cards for me. When I went to college, I went to the University of Florida, very lost, changed my major a ton of times and landed on finance and thought that I was going to work on Wall Street. Now I laugh because I would have been the worst investment banker probably ever, but that was the plan. And at 19 years old, I went to the mall, should have never been there because I had no money, but that's where I was. And I fell in love with a pair of jeans. And these jeans were $99. And I think this is kind of where that childlike entrepreneurial spirit kicked in. What can I do to make $99 to buy these jeans? And the first thought I had was, I'll clean someone's house. So I put an ad on Craigslist. A woman hired me. I charged exactly the price of the jeans. And I thought that was it. I mean, if someone would have told me at that point in my life, this is the start of your future destiny as a cleaning business owner, I would have cried and begged for any other destiny than that one. But long story short, that client told her friends about me. And there came a day where I was cleaning 7 days a week. And I would say it dawned on me that I had a business. Right before my senior year, I got a contract to clean 800 empty college apartments. And that's when I realized, oh, maybe this is actually a business. So I hired a team of 60 people. And I'm sure we'll talk about what happened in that with those 45 people. I had 45 people who walked out on me, and we could talk about that. But that was really when my life changed. I realized I had this business. I was really fascinated and curious with how do you inspire people when the work that you're doing is cleaning a toilet? And so I turned down a job in finance and I was determined to make this business work. And it's been 13 years. My company, Student Made, is still kicking. We're alive and kicking, and we employ students. We clean. But I think at the heart of what we do is we have a focus on leadership and really helping our team members become the best versions of themselves.
So I'm pretty sure that as I go through the list of names over there, I know most of the folks that are on this call. When I do strategic planning, when I go speak at conferences, one of the things that I always start with when we're talking about leadership is how many folks planned on working in a credit union? How many folks planned on leading people? And most of the time, hands don't go up. I actually did a podcast, gosh, this is probably about 3 or 4 years ago with one of our coaches, Chris Lacurdo. And it was called The Accidental Leader because I started a business, but I knew nothing about leadership. And I think a lot of folks who end up in leadership positions are kind of in that same boat.
Absolutely. And, it's like the dots. I think what happens is and even right now, the same is true for right now. We have no idea where we'll be in 5 years and 10 years. And sometimes while you're going through it, the dots don't connect. But when you look back, you realize that everything connected and it all happened the way it was supposed to. But sometimes in the moment, you don't really realize that your future path is being formed.
So we talk a lot about culture too, and you kind of mentioned the big debacle as soon as you got that that apartment contract. Tell us a little bit more about what happened.
Yeah, so get this contract to clean 800 apartments. I have a team of 60 people, 21. I don't know anything about leadership, anything about business really. And I meant well. I just truly didn't know how to lead a team. And so these 60 people are cleaning filthy apartments, and I'm basically just twiddling my thumbs, sitting in the office, not doing anything, not sure what I'm supposed to be doing. And the work was hard. And you mix that with a leader that doesn't really seem to care about you, because I didn't go and check on them. I didn't even know their names. I mean, I was a horrible leader now looking back. They quit. And it was this really dramatic moment. My book opens with the story. I'm sitting in this like clubhouse office in the middle of the complex, and 45 people just walk in, and one person says, "We quit." And I went through this range of emotions, from at first being angry at them, like how could they do this? How, they committed to this job. It was only a 3-week job. How could they back out? And then panic set in, because I had all these apartments to clean and only 15 people left. And so I knew I had to get these people back. And I went and found the 15 people who did not get the memo to walk out, and told them what happened, and asked them if they had any ideas of ways we could get them back. And we decided to have an emergency meeting at my house that night. And the way we got everyone to show up is we said, "You'll get your paycheck if you show up." And we're all broke college students, so of course everybody's going to show up. They want an early paycheck. So I really didn't know what to say, and I just was honest. I said, "I've never done this before. Clearly I've made some mistakes. I'm not really sure what mistakes, because no one really said why they were quitting, but I think it's maybe because of me, and I want to be better. I need your help." And I think that was my first real leadership lesson, that the best thing you can do when you're unsure or you've messed up is just say it, admit it. Don't let your ego get in the way. And what ended up happening is those people gave me another chance. They saw me as a human being, and we went back, and we finished the apartments, and everything changed after that. So I think in terms of culture, what I learned very quickly is that the work itself was not going to keep people. No one wanted to clean toilets. The pay wasn't so great either, and still isn't so great. Our margins are low. Cleaning businesses on average 15% profit margin. So you don't have a lot to pay people what they deserve for this kind of work. So if it's not the pay and it's not the work, what is it? And I learned it's the environment, the culture. It's how we make people feel.
So many questions. I want to go back to the point where you said, "I was just honest with them."
Yeah.
A lot of people think leaders shouldn't show their vulnerable side. They're the leader. They should keep all the power to themselves. How tough was that for you to just get down on their level and be vulnerable and honest with them about what you were feeling and what you did?
In that moment, it wasn't hard, because I just did it was like instinctual, because when I grew up in our home, we always talked about failure. At dinner, my parents would ask, "What went well today? What didn't?" And you would say it. And then like, "What did you learn from it?" And they modeled that behavior, and they would talk about the things that they got wrong. And so in the moment, I just did what I had always done. Talk about what you did and how you messed up. But as the business grew, and as the stakes got higher, and as I had a larger team, I think I absolutely made a switch, where now you have all this pressure as a leader. And I think right now, my goodness, in this time of uncertainty with, this pandemic, we think that strong leadership is having all the answers, knowing the next step, not admitting weakness, not admitting error. But I think it's actually the opposite. It's being able to admit the things you're sure about and the things you're not sure about. It's a mix of optimism and realism. It's a mix of, I screwed up and you screwed this up, and let's figure out how we can talk about this together and learn and grow from this together. So yeah, I think we've got to redefine what strong leadership looks like.
And it wasn't just you talking. You gave an opportunity for your staff to talk back at you and give their feedback. Well, what did they have to say, and how did that feel?
Well, the first piece of feedback I got is, "You need to clean with us." So I did. The rest of that contract, I was out there cleaning every day with them and helping them. And And they didn't know they could take breaks. That was how bad of a leader I was. I just assumed if you need a break, you'll take a break. But okay, let's have a conversation about that. Now, today, of course, I'm not cleaning, but if I had to, if push came to shove, I would do it. And so I think leadership is about showing that you are willing to do what you're asking your people to do, but also creating that space for open communication and dialogue. I think that's one of the reasons that Student Made has been so successful, is because we teach people how to use their voice. We actually train people on how to give feedback, and we ask them for feedback, and we do something with it. And I think that makes people feel, well, valued, but also you're giving everyone ownership. And I think we all want to have ownership.
Tell us a little bit more about the feedback. You said you kind of teach your staff how to give feedback. That's one of the things that I'm awful at. I see a few of my team members on here, and I always admit to them, I try to say what I'm trying to say, but being a high D, we use the DISC personality, is bullet points, and sometimes it just doesn't come out the way that I hope it comes out. Share a little bit more about how you walk your staff through that.
Well, my journey with feedback was pretty painful. I mean, when 45 people walked out on me, it kind of gave me a complex. I was afraid of people quitting for a long time. I was afraid that I learned in that moment that my actions could make people leave. So I avoided critical feedback for a long time. And then I realized that wasn't sustainable. And then I would sugarcoat it, which I realized when you do that, that thing where you give them a compliment and then you sandwich in the critical feedback and then you end with a compliment. Really, that's confusing to people, because when you're on the receiving end of that, you're not sure if you did something right or something wrong or what the person's trying to say. And then what I realized too is it was a two-way street. The team wasn't comfortable giving me feedback. So I would wake up to resignation emails in my inbox from people who I thought were happy. And they would be listing all these reasons and all these things that they were upset about. And I'm reading it thinking, oh my goodness, if I would have known this, we could have fixed it. All these things are easily fixable. I just didn't know. So I had to get better at it, and I had to help the team get better at it so that we could do this together. And I took a listening and communication class from a company that I absolutely love, Barry Waymiller. The CEO, Bob Chapman, is one of my greatest friends and mentors. And they're very much a very people-focused company. And so in this class, I learned about a tool called the FBI. And Bob has given me permission to share this with everybody. It's in the book, share it with everybody. The FBI is a sentence that incorporates three things. The F, feeling. How do you feel? The B, behavior. What was the behavior that made you feel this way? And the I is the impact. What was the impact of that behavior? So for example, let's say someone's late to a meeting. You could say, I felt disappointed when you were 30 minutes late to the meeting, and the impact is now I don't know if I can rely on you. And I really don't want to feel that way. Can you help me understand what happened? So the other thing I learned is that recognition is a part of feedback. And I was guilty of giving very generic recognition, things like, thank you, you're awesome, great to have you on the team, which is nice, but it doesn't really help people identify their strengths and their contributions. And that's really what leadership is. We want to help people see what they're doing great so they can keep doing it. So you can also use the FBI for recognition. So you could say, let's say somebody spoke up in a meeting, and it's somebody who normally doesn't share their opinion in a meeting. You could say, I have to tell you, I felt really proud when you spoke up yesterday in the meeting, and the impact after you shared your opinion, everyone else felt more comfortable sharing, and we had a really productive meeting. So thank you. And now that person is probably more inclined to speak up next time. So to sum it up, the purpose of critical feedback is to inspire behavior change. And the only way to really do that is to attach a feeling to give the specific behavior so the person knows what to do differently, and the impact so that they're motivated to change it. And the purpose of recognition is to inspire people to continue doing the amazing things they're doing and to help them see their gifts and contributions. And the more you follow the FBI format, the more you're, number one, giving them a reason to want to do it again because they know it's making you feel this awesome feeling and it has a great impact. But also you're giving them the specific puzzle piece, the clue of, when you say great job, no one really knows what you're talking about. But when you say you spoke up in the meeting, it's like, okay, now I know specifically what to do again. So that was a very long answer.
No, that's great. And something really important in there, we think of critical feedback as the time when someone screws up. It's a learning opportunity, or and jump on them for it. Something I don't do near enough of is the critical feedback on the good things to encourage that behavior. I see stuff all the time that my team does. I'm like, wow, that's pretty amazing. And it never comes out of here. It just stays right here. And I hate that, because they never know, they never get that opportunity to have that feeling of being proud that they did that.
Yeah. Can I add a couple other things? This is
Absolutely
like one of my favorite topics in the world. So one thing is we have to teach people how to give feedback, because it's not something that we're taught in school. And so what happens is, the reason why our team, like I was giving the example of getting resignation notices and not having known any of this, is because people don't really know how to bring these issues to light. You know, how do I communicate this? So we teach the FBI in our training so that all of our team members know how to use it. And we literally say, I need to give you an FBI. We use the same language. So I think it's very important that we all have the same framework. So in your credit union, you know, could you teach everyone the FBI and commit to that being the way that you give recognition and critical feedback? The other piece is on the accepting of feedback. How we receive feedback is really important when it comes to trust, because if we become defensive and we shut down, we basically are sending a message to that person, don't give me feedback again. And so now they're intimidated and afraid to come talk to us, and really we're robbing ourselves of the chance to build trust and to strengthen that relationship. So I like to think about feedback as a gift, and sometimes the delivery is not great. You know, I approach it with empathy. Like this person probably didn't take a class on how to give feedback, okay? And I try to recognize the act. It is more courageous and caring to tell someone when you notice they could be better. And it's harder to do that. It's easier to look the other way and sweep it under the rug. And so I just like to look at it as, okay, this person cares about me, and their delivery could have been better, okay, but they care about me. And so I think just sometimes we forget that how we respond also determines the future relationship we have with that person in terms of communication.
And making sure it doesn't get personal. I know that's one of the things that, you know, I've got some staff members that I know I have to approach differently than I would someone else, because they, you know, somewhere in their root system, they've been damaged by a parent, a teacher, another leader somewhere, where they've kind of been railed on, and, you know, approaching them a little bit differently, still having the tough conversation, but an extra dose of empathy, I think, is the best way to say it.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about another piece in the book, something that always comes up when we do strategic planning. We identify the things that could make something not happen. So if we say we want to grow loans 8% next year, we identify how we're going to do it in strategic planning. But then we also identify what are the things that are going to keep us from doing that. And task saturation is on every single one of those lists, because as I go through the list of attendees, it's a lot of small credit unions. The CEO is wearing more than one hat. Yeah. So in your book, you talk about micromanaging and having to give up stuff to your staff and trust them. Talk about that process, how you finally came to do that.
Well, I started not being a micromanager. And I think I started emulating how my parents raised my sister and I, which was very much, we believe in you before you've proven yourselves. We believe in your capabilities. And if you mess up, you're going to figure it out. And we're here to support you, but we're not here to do the hard things for you. And so, and you know, growing up, what this looked like was, hey, Dad, I need help with this homework. Sorry, I'm not going to be there when you take the test. So you need to figure out where you're stuck and go into school early tomorrow and get unstuck. And, you know, in those moments, I really hated both of my parents for that. But now I'm so grateful, because I realized they were teaching me to be resilient and to rely on myself, and that I am capable. I can do it. So I very much, I think that was my leadership style. When I started the company, it was, I'm going to trust you with this before you're ready. And if you mess up, I'm going to just let you figure it out. And my first really crazy story with this is I had an HR intern. She was 19 years old. Her name is Lizzie. She's my first ever intern, and I put her in charge of payroll. And my payroll company was like, do not put Lizzie in charge of payroll. She doesn't have any payroll experience. And she overpaid 27 people by $40,000 the first time she submitted payroll on her own. And, you know, I said, you got to figure it out. You got to figure out how we're going to get the money back. And it was so painful, but she figured it out. And she was so proud that she figured it out. And actually, she went on to have a career working at a payroll company. And now she's an auditor, which is just so funny. But anyway, that was my style. You know, I really, and I think because that was my first real screw up of someone on the team, I had a pretty high screw up tolerance because we recovered from that. But then again, as the stakes got higher and the business grew, and the more my identity became the business, the more controlling, the more I wanted to hang on to things and double check everything. And I remember there was a time where I was traumatized by my ringtone, because that's how many times people would call me throughout the day, asking me questions, asking me to solve this, asking me to solve that. To this day, if I hear that ringtone that I had back then, I have to leave the room. Like it brings back these horrible memories. But I didn't have the insight to recognize that I was the problem, that the environment I had set up was, I don't trust you, so you have to run everything by me. And I mean, people would call and ask things like, I left my cleaning partner at the last job by mistake. Should I turn around and go pick him up? Like, yeah, why are you even calling me asking me this? Because of me. So long story short, I went through a series of things. I made an FAQ book, gave it to everyone. I said, here, next time you have a question, flip through here and see if the answer is in here, which was so inefficient. And of course the answer was never in there. And then I hired people to finally help me, leadership team. And I thought that would solve it, but no, same thing. Team members would go to them, they would come to me. And it wasn't until I took my first real vacation and unplugged and was unavailable. And there was this thing that happened in the company. Someone slipped and they got hurt, and I wasn't available to help. And the team had no choice but to figure it out. And they were so proud to tell me that they figured it out. And that was like when this huge light bulb moment went off, that I was getting in the way of everybody building resilience, growing. You know, the business would not grow if I continued to stay involved in every decision and everything. So I really made this intentional choice to step back. And I think it's a couple of things. One, recognize where your sense of control is coming from. Is it fear? Is it because your identity is wrapped up into this? You know, sometimes just being aware of what is causing that behavior is important, just on a personal level. The other thing is recognizing that it's not sustainable if you're not inviting other people in to help you, and if you're not empowering them and helping them grow. And if you're giving people a soft landing, you know, it's kind of like helicopter parents, the parents who hover, and when their kids fall down, you know, they swoop in and they save the day. Great, it's nice. We love our kids, that's why we do it, but we're not giving them the chance to grow and to learn and to do it differently because we swooped in and saved the day. So are you a helicopter leader? Are you giving your people a soft landing? How can you, next time they fall down, ask them, well, what do you think you should do? What's your next step? We have this tool we use called the 131, and it's so powerful. So when someone has a challenge or they make a mistake, we ask them for their 131. So the 1 is, what's the challenge or the mistake? The 3, what are 3 potential ideas or solutions? And the 1, what's your recommendation out of all those solutions? So we put it on them to do the thinking, and we guide them. It's our job as leaders to guide them, but it's not our job to do the thinking and do the cleanup and do the hard stuff. If we want to really have an empowered team, we have to let go.
Not only an empowered team, growth is a big piece of it, allowing that opportunity for the team to grow. But for credit unions who want to grow the credit union, they want to grow loans, they want to grow members. It's tough to grow the credit union when you're so involved in so many of those little decisions.
Yep. And people will mess up. So here's the other thing. People will say, oh, well, you know, I don't want to give up control on that because I don't know if anyone will be able to do it like I do. Humans are always going to mess up. Doesn't matter what the job is, what the task is. We have to accept that's an inevitable part of the process. And how we handle those screw ups can be huge growth and learning opportunities. I mean, if you were to think back in your life of all the biggest lessons you've learned, probably a lot of them stemmed from failures. You know, like the 45 people walking out on me, huge defining moment for me. So think about it like you're giving, you know, that's what's happening. Someone's failing. You can make this that kind of moment for them by saying, what are you going to do differently? How are you going to bounce back from this? What's your next step? And really just empowering them to grow from it.
Really cool thing when I started doing that, we don't do the 1-3-1, but I did start asking the team, hey, what would you do?
Yeah.
A lot of times they come up with ideas that I never would have thought of that are 10 times better than anything I could have come up with. And that's really when we started seeing the growth, when the team had the ability to have input and fail and learn from it.
Yeah, I call it asking instead of telling. So what would you do instead of here's what I would do?
So we're 12:26 right now. I want to open it up before we go any further. Does anyone have any questions? You can put it in the chat box or just let us know and I can unmute you and you can join the conversation with us. I'll give you a second to get the chat open. We're good. Okay. We'll carry on. So the book, I don't want to give too much away because I would love for folks to get it and spend some time with it, give it to their leadership team. But obviously, you write the book and there's probably something that a couple months later, after it's done, it's published, it's ready to go, you're like, man, I wish I had included that story, or I just figured this out. If I write another book, this is what I'm going to put in there. What was that aha moment, that thing that you wish you had shared with folks in that book?
There's so many. When I was writing the book, so first of all, the book took 2.5 years to write, and I went 1.5 years past my deadline. And two things come to mind. One is kind of not related to your question, but I promise it will make sense. So I learned through this process that I'm a perfectionist. And I thought that I wasn't. So it was a very eye-opening experience writing the book. I mean, I remember spending one whole day on a sentence. My team was about to kill me. Why are you, no one's they're going to breeze by this sentence just like they do all the other ones. And they're not going to notice the difference between this one and this one. And now I realize they're right. And I think there is something about writing a book because it really is your identity. And that's what it was for me. That, I think that was kind of the fear of, first of all, it's a vulnerable book, but also the fear of judgment. When this book is published, what will people say about me, think about me? And I had to really learn to let go of that fear. And my favorite chapter in the whole book is chapter 7. And this is why. So I was on the last day, the manuscript was due, and chapter 7 was not written. And my publisher called and we had a really direct and honest conversation. And he said, if you do not submit chapter 7 today, we have to push the book back a whole publishing cycle. Well, that would have been devastating. So I had about 4 hours to write a whole chapter. And just to put it in perspective, the other chapters took months. And so I had no choice but to write from my heart. I had no choice to be completely unfiltered and to just write. And it's my favorite chapter because when I read it, it's like all the things I wanted to say. Because what it taught me is it's all in here. It's just that we overthink it and we let the fear of judgment get in the way. And sometimes I think that stuff prevents us from doing our best work. And while I love the book, I do wonder, what if I had written every chapter like chapter 7? So that's that. As far as stories that weren't in, when I was writing the book, I was going through a really hard time. We had a second location that we had decided to sell because it wasn't doing how we wanted it to do. It was failing. I had a person on my leadership team who I'd worked with for over 8 years, had just left the company, and it was really hard. It felt like a death. It felt like grieving. And because I was still processing those emotions, I wasn't on the other side of it yet. And I wasn't able to write about that process. So I would have loved to be able to continue the chapter I wrote about losing this person and selling the location and kind of like what happened after that and how I navigated the feelings. But because everything was so fresh and happening in the moment, I had no choice but to write about how I was feeling then. And I didn't, yet have the future insight. So I would say probably that.
Let's talk about that for a minute. One of the awesome things about credit unions is we're great people. One of the worst things about credit unions is we're great people. There are people on our leadership teams at our credit unions that they're great people, but they weren't growing with the credit union. And that's kind of what was happening in your situation. Tell us how that unfolded, because there's a lot of fear keeping people in positions either by their choice or the credit union choice, and it's not doing anyone any good. Share a little bit more about that for us.
Yeah, with two of those examples, so deciding to sell the second location and then losing this member of my leadership team, the common theme in both of them is I knew that it was time to walk away, and I waited way too long to do it. And with the location, really, the reason for that is I let the world define success for me instead of really thinking about what I thought success was. And everyone was asking, when's your next location? When are you opening the second location? And I really just caved into the pressure and did what everyone else told me they thought I should do, instead of really asking myself, do I really want to open a second location? And the answer really deep down was no, I don't. I'm happy with our one location, and the focus for us is leadership development. And I wanted to grow and like speaking and teaching what we were doing to other teams. And like, that's how I wanted to grow the company. And so the lesson there was learning to just not let other people define success for me and for our team and for us to really define it. But with losing the member of my leadership team, for a couple of years, our relationship had really changed. And we were doing this, and really it was a misalignment of values, of the future trajectory of the company. And I still care about her. She gave so much to the company. I admire so much about her, but there did come a day where I realized this relationship is causing more pain than it's bringing joy. And there's more negativity around this relationship that's affecting the team than there is positivity that's building the team and lifting the team up. And what I didn't have the courage to do was to ask her to leave. She had to make that decision. And if I could go back, I wish I would have had the courage to start the conversation so that she didn't have to be the one to make the decision. But yeah, what you said, you can still care about people and also realize that it's time to part ways. And a question that I ask myself now is there more good than bad? Do the strengths outweigh the weaknesses of the relationship? And if the answer is yes, then I'm going to keep trying. But once it begins to shift and there's more bad than good and the weaknesses outweigh the strengths, that's when it's time to walk away.
That's tough, because you get in whether it's a comfort situation, you're afraid of change. What's going to happen without this person? You're talking about leadership, but then you've got some employees who just aren't good fits either. And we've been in a situation twice out of our last 13-ish years where we were kind of understaffed. We were working our butts off. And there was 2 occasions where we had to let people go. And our team was so worried, let's just keep them because we've got so much going on now. Come to find out, that person leaves our organization. And that fear of we're going to have all this work we're going to have to take on, all of a sudden we're down a person, we're getting out of there at 5 or 5:30. Yeah. And we realized just how much havoc one person could cause the organization. And that fear of letting go would have just kept us in that crazy cycle.
Yes. And I think that's what, when I was writing the book, what I was going through is that fear. This was my right-hand person. This is the person that was there from the very beginning. How can I do this without her? And now that I'm on the other side of this, I don't have fear of losing people. Like, I do think that people evolve, and sometimes people can still love your organization and you can have a great relationship, and also they want to move on. They want to do something else. Maybe they want to start their own thing, and all of that's okay. And so I think I've just learned to really let go of my fear there, and to not let losing someone prevent me from trusting again or taking a risk again. And what you said, on a team level, we have to have the courage to walk away, because if we don't, especially if there's someone who's not performing well, the team the people who are, see this person and they think, how can this person still have their job? And I'm working so hard and delivering, and this person isn't, and they still have their job. And now it's bringing the morale down for everyone. And so it's kind of like, yeah, you say you have these values, but do you really walk your talk? And deciding to keep someone on the team that doesn't embody the values or is dragging the team down is basically telling your team that you don't really mean it when you say that you care about the values, which is a painful lesson that I've had to learn many times. Two quick tangible things that you can do. One is called a culture performance audit. We do this on our team every quarter. We take the whole team, we evaluate the whole team based on two things. Culture, which for us is, do they embody the values? And then performance, are they performing well? And if someone does not meet the culture requirement, which is the first one, that's it. We're walking away. No further review needed. But if they fit, if the culture is a check and then they aren't meeting the performance, that's when we say, okay, we're going to work with them because they do embody our values. We're going to give them a chance to change their performance. We're going to have a real honest conversation about it. We're going to put some guidelines together of what needs to change by when, and we're going to give them the chance to improve. Something else you can do, well, something else to think about. I don't know if have you read Radical Candor by Kim Scott?
Yes.
Such a good book. And she says in the book, so Kim Scott was a Yahoo exec, and she says in the book that sometimes what happens when people aren't performing well is because we've taken someone that she calls a rock star and we've made them a superstar, or we take a superstar and we make them a rock star. So rock stars are people who like to really learn something, master it, do the same thing, be consistent every day. Think of them like the rocks of your credit union. It doesn't work without them. And then you have the superstars, who are the people who, yes, they like to learn something and master it, but then they want to move on to the next thing, the next challenge, the next project. They maybe even want to move up in ranks, maybe they want to be leading a team. So if you think about it, sometimes what happens is you have someone, rock star, loyal, consistent, doesn't work without them. And you think, I'm going to give this person a promotion and I'm now going to put them in charge and they're going to be leading a team of these 3 people, but they never wanted that. And their performance dips because they've been made to be somebody they're not. They're a rock star now trying to be a superstar. And on the flip side, you have superstars and you put them in a rock star position, they get completely bored and disengaged because they want to go up to the next thing and you're not giving that opportunity. So all that to say, when someone isn't performing, we first need to ask ourselves, did we put them in the right position? And then if the answer is yes, then we move on to, then what's their part in this?
When I used to be in radio, you would see people who would get a program director job to run a radio station because, well, they've been there. They're the most tenured person, so we'll move them into management. And they're awesome. They're an awesome DJ, an awesome on-air personality. They're an awful leader. Or vice versa. You've got an awesome program director that you put them on the air, and the ratings are probably just gonna plummet, just wrong fits. I want to go back to culture for a minute. Culture, it's a short word, but it's a huge word. It's almost a buzzword. People talk about culture. I want culture in my credit union. And I think a lot of people forget that you have a culture. You have one now. It just may not be good.
True.
So how do you define culture? You're talking about kind of assessing the staff on a quarterly basis for, are they a cultural fit? What are kind of the guidelines that you use to say, this is our culture and this is how we really define if you're a fit here or not?
Well, I used to think that culture meant, oh, you have a ping pong table, you have beer on tap, you let people bring their pets to work. Because I would hear people all the time talk about, oh, Google has a great culture and this company has a great culture. So I would look up what they have and I would basically look at all the perks they offered. And that's what I thought culture was. But people were still quitting and I couldn't figure it out. And then I read this book, Delivering Happiness, which is the story of Zappos. And it's written by Tony Hsieh, the CEO of Zappos. And he taught me what culture is. It's a feeling. It's how people feel when they walk in, when they walk out. It's how we feel when we're in a time like this one and we're having to interact with everyone over Zoom. It's how our customers feel when they engage with us. And so that totally changed my viewpoint. And I started to think, how do I want people to feel? And instead of making that decision myself, I asked the team, how do you want to feel? And we had this great meeting and all these wonderful feelings came up. And how it started is I made these word maps. So all the feelings that came out of that meeting, I put them in a word map, printed it out, put it in a frame on everyone's desk, all over the office. And I told our leadership team and everyone, the next time you make a decision, make sure that it's going to lead to people feeling this way. And if it's not, make a different decision. And so those feelings became kind of our compass. Now, what we do is we have values. And I will be honest with you, I think values, it's okay to outgrow and to evolve, we're in the process of actually revisiting our values and defining new ones, because we've gotten more clarity on what culture is and how values really drive culture. But the purpose of values are to identify this common kind of like DNA and framework. You want to attract people who embody these values naturally so that your environment feels a certain way. So for example, if you want your environment to feel like everyone's a team, well, then you need to attract people who really embody the value of teamwork, who recognize the importance of teamwork. So it's just, I think there's a correlation between how you want people to feel, what values drive those feelings, and then you evaluate people based on the values.
Where's that line? You talk about how we want people to feel, and I think a lot of hard-nosed leaders would say, I don't care about feelings. We've got work to do. Where's that line of we want people to feel good, but sometimes making them feel good isn't in their best interest? How do you find that line?
Yeah, well, I used to be the kind of leader that wanted to please everyone. And sometimes it meant not being direct and honest with people, with feedback like we've talked about, but sometimes it meant making decisions that weren't the best for the business because I was afraid of how people would respond or react to them. And I've learned that if, responsible leadership, you gotta have a business that's doing well. In order to be able to take care of people, your business has to be doing well so that you have the resources to take care of people. And so that connection, for me was really important. And sometimes I'll say, I have this line that I say, it's okay that you disagree with this decision. And what I would love to ask for is your support. So there's this distinction between people can disagree and also support. But I think it's your job as a leader to communicate why you're doing something. If people disagree, to explain kind of the thinking behind it and how the decision is related to maybe the organization, and how in turn, the stronger the organization is, the better our people will be. I think sometimes we don't communicate all of that. So then the way that it's taken is, oh, they don't care about me. And it's, no, I'm making this decision because I do care about you. It's just you can't really see it that way because I haven't communicated the whole thing. So yeah, I mean, leadership is hard. And if you try to please everybody, first of all, it's impossible. You'll never please everybody.
If we haven't learned that yet, probably a good day to do that.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about leadership in the times of COVID-19. You've had to make some tough decisions for your business. Walk us through the process of, back in the middle of March when all of this really started happening. What was your decision-making process? What tough decisions did you have to make? What do you wish you had done differently? And what are you proud of over the last couple months?
Well, this is the greatest test of leadership, I think. There are no answers. And I think it's a mix of leading yourself through uncertainty and leading other people through it when you're not really even sure how to quite lead yourself. So I think that's what makes it so complicated. One of the first decisions we had to make at the beginning of all this is, do we stay open or do we close? And we're an essential business, so we didn't have to close. And I would describe it as a moral dilemma, because on one hand, people are expecting that we clean. And during a pandemic, when it's important for things to be sanitized, one could argue that this is our time to shine. We need to be there for our customers. And we have people who depend on us, people with dementia who won't remember to take out the trash if we're not there. On the other hand, can we honestly say that we're keeping people safe, that we're not causing any risk to our customers or our team members? And that was, what do we do? And so I invited the team to help me make the decision. We had a Zoom meeting company-wide, and the decision that we made is to stay open. But I went to bed that night and I couldn't sleep. And it was my values tugging at me. Something doesn't feel right here. And I asked myself a question that really helps me in difficult decisions. If money wasn't a part of the equation, what would I choose? And money was absolutely a part of the equation. Being closed means revenue coming to a screeching halt. For our people, I'm sure they wanted to stay open because they're thinking closed might mean no paycheck. So yeah, let's stay open. But if money weren't a part of the equation, If I knew that we would have enough money to keep the business in business and to keep people paid, what would I do? I would absolutely close. So I called another meeting like less than 24 hours later, told the team that we were going to close, and made a commitment to keep everyone paid, knowing the cost of that, knowing that it could mean taking out a loan, if that's what it has to mean. Told our clients about the decision, and the response was, thank you for making the humane choice. Clients started donating gift cards. I've been doing virtual sessions for teams with this pay what you can, just kind of honoring where everyone is with COVID. And we've had so many people just so generous. We've been able to keep everyone paid, honor our commitment. And even our clients who had, like the dementia situation I explained, their kids are calling us. Thank you so much for protecting our parents. We're going to make sure they're taken care of. So we've reopened. And we're going slowly and safely. We're microbial certified, all this stuff. But I think that the key is, at the end of the day, the buck stops at the leader. And you've got to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, with everything in you, that you're taking care of your people. And if there's something that doesn't feel right, whether it's people, meaning your customers and your team members, no matter what the cost, we have to have the courage to make a different decision. And I think that's what's so hard about this time, is these decisions have real costs, and it's going to take some time to recover and to rebuild. But I would rather be able to look back on this time and say that every step of the way, we acted in line of our values, and we took care of our people throughout the whole thing.
I wrote a blog a couple of weeks ago about that, with folks going through strategic planning right now. How do we make these decisions? And I said, you get to Thanksgiving 2020, and I said, in your best Golden Girls voice, picture this: Thanksgiving 2020. Are you proud of the decisions you made?
Yeah, like you're writing the story right now, and the decisions we make and the decisions we choose to not make are determining future success and loyalty and trust. And I do think, and not to say that this in your credit unions, but just like on a bigger scale, I'm seeing companies that I used to really love and support making decisions that I'm just thinking, I'm never going to buy from you again. And I know that their people are thinking, yeah, I don't matter. And we're not seeing people maybe leave jobs right now because everyone is scared. If you leave your job, how do you know you're going to get another job? But I promise, when this is more normalized, again, and there's an opportunity to leave your job, you're leaving your job because you're realizing that the organization you're working with does not care about you.
Absolutely. I think that's going to be a huge opportunity for a lot of our credit unions to find some great talent once things start cleaning up a little bit. Question from Brenton Collins: how does a culture based on being in person with teammates and clients fit in today's environment? It's kind of what we were talking about before we even jumped on this call.
Can you say it one more time?
Yeah. How does a culture based on being in person with teammates and clients fit in today's environment?
Yes. So my leadership team has been remote for over 5 years, and we've had to learn how to build, the culture from Zoom. We've got people in different time zones, living in different states. And in many ways that conditioned us. We kind of like got all the learnings out of the way so that when we now are in COVID-19, we knew what to do. What I can tell you is you can absolutely create that culture, whether you're in person or whether you're behind a screen. But it takes a lot more effort and a lot more intention when you're not physically in the same room. When we were all in the same place with our leadership team, I took for granted the opportunities we had to connect and to build trust. Just like the passing of the offices and saying hi, and sometimes going out to lunch, or before a meeting starting, just catching up with the person next to you. Like, as soon as we all relocated, those opportunities were gone, and all we had were our meetings. And I think out of anything we do, our meetings are so critical. How many meetings are we having? Are we being intentional with them? What are the purposes of our meetings? Who's at our meetings? Are we using our meetings to foster, trust, build connection, build relationship? Is it all just business? We start every meeting with something called a personal check-in, which is where each person just kind of goes around and shares how they're doing, what they're feeling. Sometimes people share hard things that are going on in their life, good things that are going on in their life. Everyone has a couple minutes to share. And it sends a message that we care about us and our relationships with one another and then we're going to talk about business. But I think sometimes we're in meetings and we're just thinking, why am I here? You don't find out what the meeting's about until the end of the meeting. You're like, oh, that's what this meeting's about. And sometimes you feel like you just don't accomplish a lot. So being really intentional, a great book you can read is Death by Meeting. And then I'll put it on the chat. On my website, let me put it on the chat. On my website, there's a page called Resources. And at the very bottom of the page, my team has put together a guide to virtual meetings. And we have all the agendas we use in our meetings and the ways that we use them to really build trust and connection. And all of the guides are pay what you can. So you can put 0 and you'll get it for free.
Great resource. And that website is in chat right now. Are there any other questions before we start wrapping up? You can put them in the chat window, or there's
already been almost an hour?
Yes. 8 minutes shy.
Oh my goodness.
Time flies. So you've mentioned the pay what you can. This is something I wanted to share with our credit unions. Tell us a little bit more about that right now.
Yeah, so in my company, my role is Chief of Vision. And I'm still very much involved in Student Made, but on a very high level and not so much in the day-to-day and the operation. And so what I normally do is I spend my time traveling and working with teams all over the world in different industries. What I love to do is to help teams build the same kind of relationships that we have on my team, same kind of culture, connection, trust, all of that. So when COVID happened, all of my in-person events like that, were moved to virtual. And I'm not gonna lie, I was just telling Bo this before we all joined. It's been nice being home. I forgot what it's like to be home and to not be living out of a suitcase and to be with my family. But it's just an incredible opportunity right now to connect and to help teams that are navigating this time. So I've just been doing pay what you can sessions, and it's literally pay what you can. Whatever your budget is, whatever you have, 100% of it goes to supporting Student Made, to our team members, to keep them paid. And then we just talk about what are your challenges, what are the goals that you have for your team right now. And I put together a custom session. We use Zoom, and we keep it really interactive, and it's been really fun.
Awesome. And you can find more information about that on the website as well. And so we've got a question from Brenton. He says, pay what you can, another great representation of your company values.
Thank you.
Awesome. We've been doing strategic reboots too. For the folks that we've done strategic planning for at some point last year, we're just doing them for free, because a lot of the assumptions we made in strategic planning last year, even in worst case scenarios, never said the entire economy is going to shut down for 2 months. So there's a lot of reboots we're doing. If you've done a strategic plan, it wasn't with us. We're doing the reboots at big discounts as well, just to try to help folks get back on track. I know there's a lot of people just kind of feeling lost and helpless right now. What do I do? What should I be doing? And some folks are just doing nothing. That's not a great answer either. And for our credit unions, I'm not going to let all of the details out yet, because we still have some things to work out. We usually do our in-person family meeting, and we had that planned for October in New Orleans again this year. That's not happening with everything being shut down in New Orleans and as bad as it is down there. So Kristen was going to be our guest speaker for that. Since you're not coming to New Orleans, we've kind of reworked how we're going to deliver that. And we're going to do a staff training session on Columbus Day. So for all of our credit unions, I know staff training usually happens right around that time, and it's usually a mad dash for speakers. It's an awesome opportunity to get someone you probably wouldn't have in your budget to do some staff training with you. So we'll have some emails going out about that in just a little bit. And my staff who's on here, they're like, what is he talking about? And we had a call just before this to try to put our heads together and figure out how can we still make the best use of your brain to bring to our clients. So I'll share more about that with our staff and our clients coming up.
Yeah.
Any last minute questions from anyone? Kristen, close us out. We've got 5 minutes left.
Okay, good. Just enough time to say the 2 things I want to say. First of all, I keep hearing people say, when is it going to go back to normal? And my feeling on this is I hope it doesn't go back to normal. Because normal was a world where more people were disengaged at work than they were engaged, where most people felt like their leader didn't really care about them. Gallup does this report every year. It's called the State of the American Workplace. And their latest report, only 4 in 10 people believe their leader cares about them. 4 in 10 people. You know, we were so busy going from one thing to the next, not really appreciating the time we have with each other. And I think what this whole experience has taught us is that we've taken a lot for granted. And I think we have this great chance to press the reset button and to design this next chapter in a way that really puts people first. And if you're already doing this, which I'm sure everyone on this call is, it's like, how can you do it even more and at an even greater level? And that's what's keeping me up at night. Those are things that I'm thinking about. Those are things that my team and I are thinking about. Like, how do we go into this next chapter and make our culture the best it's ever been and make our people feel like they matter to us more than they've ever felt that they've mattered to us? And the same with our customers. And then the second thing is, I just want to acknowledge what you all do. When this crisis began, you know, my first thought, I got to keep my people paid. And the PPP, of course, happened. And my bank was not able to help me. They promised that I was going to be the first applicant that would go through the process. And when the applications became available, they didn't have their ducks in a row, sadly. And so here I was thinking I was going to be able to apply with them. And then the day of, they told me that they weren't able to help me. And it was a local credit union that saved the day for us. They processed the application, they walked us through it, and within 10 days, we got the funding. And I'm getting chills because, you know, like that meant that everyone in my company would be taken care of for 8 weeks, which is huge. And so just recognize that right now, what you're doing for your clients, no matter what it is, it's invaluable. It's invaluable. And maybe you just need that reminder of why you do what you do. Just thank you. Because in times of crisis, the people that we look to are you. So thank you.
I was super excited when I saw your post on Instagram and it had the credit union logo in the background. I'm like, yes, she used a credit union.
And by the way,
Awesome.
we will be, maybe I shouldn't say this on a recording, but we might be moving all of our banking.
You know, that's something you said about 10, 15 minutes ago. People are looking at how brands are responding right now, and they're going to remember it. And I don't know, a lot of our credit unions have shined during this time. Awesome. Kristen, thank you for spending the hour with us. Glenda says, thank you. It's an eye opener. And Glenda from St. Tammany, thanks for joining us today. And thank you everyone for coming on. Kristen, thanks for spending the hour with us.
Yes. And I always end with a Zoom hug. So I'm going to give you all a Zoom hug. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for joining. And Kristen, we'll see you in October.
Yes. See you then.
All right. Thanks everyone. Have a great day.